Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Alden. I'm Scott Seaman, Dean of the Libraries, and thank you for joining us this afternoon for Authors at Alden. Today we are happy to celebrate the digitization of the Brown family letters. It's a collection of letters that span from 1860 to 1864 and gives a personal perspective of the impact of the American Civil War on one of our local families. That students, scholars, and families can now easily search and view this unique collection over the web is a thanks to many of our staff and librarians inside of Alden Library. And two of the principals who spearheaded that project are with us this afternoon. Karmen Beecroft, Alden Library's Digital Projects Librarian, received her bachelor's degree in history with a museum studies specialization from Michigan State University, and her master's in information with a library service specialization from the University of Michigan. Karmen previously worked in special collections at the University of Michigan Libraries. Stacey Lavender comes to Alden from the University of Houston, where she served as the University of Houston's Arts and History Archives Fellow, processing archival collections and curating digital projects. She earned her master's degree in information with two specializations in archives and records management. She began working for the libraries as a digital projects librarian for arts and archives, but has recently assumed the role of special collections librarian for our manuscripts collection. In addition to today's events, Karmen and Stacey have curated an accompanying exhibit on the 5th floor of Alden. Remember, that's only one floor up. It's in the exhibit area of the Mon Center, and it's titled Civil War Stories, Everyday Lives in an Extraordinary Era. And that highlights some of our additional Civil War collections and incorporates more voices from that era. And it directly complements today's program. And in advance, I'd like to thank Professor Shelley Delaney and her students, Rachel Gauntz, Jackson Savage, and Nick Wilson from the Division of Theater, as well as Alden Library's own Lorraine Wachna, who will generously bring their talents to help give voice to some of these letters. Just as a plug, the Division of Theater's first show of the season, titled In the Next Room, or the Vibrator Play, by Sarah Rule, opens on October 5th and is directed by Professor Delaney, and admission is free for Ohio University students. So thank you for coming, and I think I give this to Karmen at this point.
Hello. Please stay until the very end because this is going to get much more interesting the longer it goes on. We're going to start with the boring stuff first. I'm just going to talk a little bit about how this collection was made and how you can search in it and use it. Then we will break for a hands-on activity and you will get behind-the-scenes information on the exhibit, a lot of really interesting stuff that is not in the digital collection. Then we're going to come back, and these lights are here for the wonderful students, faculty, and Lorraine of the theater department and the library, where you will get to get the real living history experience. These are wonderful actors, and they're going to be suggesting the time period in costume. You're really going to get to hear this stuff as people would have experienced it in the day. So that aside, we'll get this stuff over with quickly, and this is going to help you in your further research as you get to interact with these materials more directly. So first, I would be remiss if I didn't thank the many, many student workers who were actually doing this work. I was overseeing the digitization is what we say, but I was not there using this equipment. And it was my hands, that put it into the database, but they were describing it. They did hundreds of hours of work over months in order to make this available, not only for the university community, but for people who can't come to special collections and will be able to use these rich resources. So we've got Kelly, McKinley, and Haley Bree, Max, and Casey, Elise, Isabella, Elizabeth, Jordan, and Abby. And there's also Stacy's student, Grace, and just a ton of people that did this work. I'm standing up here, but that doesn't mean that it's my baby exclusively. Given that, what you really want to know is how to get there. So you can start just by going to the library homepage. You will note that it no longer has the U in it. We're just library.ohio.edu now. You can search all of our digital archives on Content DM, which is one of 2 repositories that we use consistently, by just going to the Digital Archives tab, or you can go to the Digital Collections tile down there, which will take you to this screen. And it's just number 4, Civil War correspondence. Or you can just type in this shortened linked bit.ly/Civil War archive. That search button up there is the same search button you saw on the home page, and you'll also see underlined here in red, Internet Archive and Content DM. That is important. This collection is on Content DM. Other collections are searchable at the item level through Internet Archive, which you may be more familiar with. It's the home of the Wayback Machine. It's basically doing all of the web archiving in the world, hundreds of billions of web pages. It's much bigger than our little installation. So, clicking on that link will take you to this landing page. You will note in great big letters at the bottom, these materials are in the public domain. There is no copyright on this material. The public domain is material that is the property of everybody. So we want you to reuse, remix, transform, and really make these your own. There are no restrictions that we're placing on these digital files or the metadata, the description of this information that accompanies it. We do just ask that you cite us, just say that this is where the physical materials are, because that helps other people come back here and get to the originals. So, when you're searching in this collection, you'll see that there are 4 facets on the side that allow you to narrow down what you're seeing by the author of the letter, the recipient of the letter, the type of document that you want to look at, and the location of the author when they were writing this letter. These are the most time-consuming parts of the collection to create because they use, and I don't want to get too technical, but they use standardized terms. So a controlled vocabulary is what we would call it in the library world. And coming up with those terms, some of them we could use existing thesauri and sets, and some of them we had to do a lot of research on our own. So these will allow you to, currently it's mostly letters, but there will be a lot more diaries in the coming weeks. As soon as I get done with this, I can start adding more stuff in, and we've got more diaries digitized. And you can also see there's a number of there's more people getting letters than there's people writing letters. But so no matter how they spell their name or what nicknames they use, you'll know who that person is because of these controlled vocabularies that we're using. And you can also see very granularly where they were writing from. So the process of building the collection began with these name authorities. We had to come up with life dates for a lot of people, so when they were born and when they died, because a lot of them had very common names. There's a lot of Elizabeths. I mean, there's a lot of Browns in the country now, as it was in the 1860s. The other branch of the family are named Van Voorhees, but they spelled their name differently from person to person and over time. We eventually standardized it, as you can see circled here, based on the one Van Voorhees who made it big, as it were. He was the proprietor of the Athens Messenger, which is the local newspaper, and that's how he spelled it, so that's how we standardized it. There's also a lot of confusion in this very complicated family tree. So we start out with a lot of double cousins, cousins who married each other, all of the same last name, and then they started marrying into the same couple of families. So we have a bunch of Elizabeth, some of them, we had an Elizabeth Foster and Elizabeth Van Voorhees, and they just switched last names. So Elizabeth Van Voorhees became Elizabeth Foster, and Elizabeth Foster became Elizabeth Van Voorhees as they married into the opposite family. So that required newspaper research, census research, city directories. There's a lot of already digitized material that we used in creating these terms. I also went to the cemetery in Albany, the Alexander Presbyterian Cemetery. So from that, I was able to determine that BCB, which you can see down there in the signature line, is Ben Cleveland Brown, who served in Company B of the 141st Ohio Volunteer Infantry. In terms of place names, I won't get too technical again, but we were able to start with like the level of an inhabited place, and then a town, a county, a state, and a country. So they're both human readable. There's one field so you can see what it is and be able to parse it in your own mind. And also there is a URI, a Uniform Resource Identifier, which is very useful if you are doing bulk mapping using computers. So the result of all of this is these two family trees. There's a ton of people. They just kept having babies. So the people in yellow are the people who are authors. The people in red are people who served in the war, and then you really can't see the green, but those are people who are mentioned quite a bit. Finally, this is a corpus of about 350,000 words just in the Brown family collection, and the Brown family collection is only going to be about half of the entire Civil War digital archive. So all of those letters, all 350,000 words, are fully transcribed. You can do keyword searching on all of this. If, for example, you try to search Gallipolice, you're not going to pull up whatever this is. Because we preserved the non-standardized spellings and misspellings that appear in the letters in order to be as authentic as possible. It's a trade-off. It's a decision that we made, and it's the best we could do with what we had. So these transcripts are available if anybody would like to download their own copy. You can just contact Beecroft at ohio.edu or Lavendess at ohio.edu. And there are a lot of really interesting applications for a data set of that large. For example, this is like really basic text analysis. I pulled out one voice that you will actually hear in the in the dramatic reading. Her maiden name was Van Voorhees. She married Joseph Hill Coulter, so her married name is Coulter. She is about 20,000 words of that 350,000 words, and you can see that she's using a lot more emotional language, that she's talking about relationships and home and worrying about the health of her family members, and you will see that very vividly in the letters as it is dramatized by Lorraine. She's also one of the most literate people in the collection. She's writing the longest sentences. She's using the most number of words. Her handwriting is best. And it's really interesting to see how that comes out when you are when you're encoding this information in statistics like this. In contrast, we have Emma Hudgel, who you will also hear her words in her voice later on. She's using shorter sentences, less specific, or less a smaller variety of words. And she's less educated. She's from a poorer family. She's really worried about her future because she just turned 19 and her family kicked her out. She's working as a servant. She doesn't like it. She wants to get married. She's waiting on her guy, and he's not coming home. And it's a different dimension. And being able to view these stories, to hear these stories, both very immediately up here, and then also being able to abstract it, I think gives a much fuller picture. So all the words, again, 350,000. When you add in the men, the sentences get a lot shorter and they start using less unique words. So I'm going to end rather abruptly and just say next half hour is up to you guys. There are pens and sealing wax, and I think there's some inkwells out there. There is some examples of Spencerian Script, which was what children would have been taught to write during the time period, and we would like you to try your own hand at it. The mechanical process of writing in this style is different than what you would experience today. Just the equipment that was available is not how you would experience writing today. You also have the opportunity to come upstairs, and Stacey will be on hand for half the period, and I'll be on hand for the other half, and we can answer questions about the exhibit items. Then we're going to reconvene here at about 2:45, and Stacey will give a short introduction to the stories you're about to hear. Okay? Good luck.
Hi, everybody. Oh, that is loud. Okay. Okay. Thanks for sticking around for the readings. We're really happy that you guys are all here. I'm only going to talk for about 5 minutes just to give you enough context. Can everyone hear me? Okay. To understand the letters that you're about to hear. Okay, so all these letters are from the Brown family collection. So it's one family. They were based in Albany, Ohio, so very local. The matriarch of the family is Elmira Brown. So she lives in Albany. She has 2 sons, Edward and Van, if this clicker will go, that are both away fighting in the war. So they're writing back and forth to each other from the front. Jane is Elmira's sister. She lives in South Lebanon, Ohio, which is near Cincinnati. So they're close enough. They live in Ohio. They send letters back and forth a lot. They talk about their families and their lives, but they're far enough that they don't get to visit each other very frequently. So you can sense that in their letters. And then the last person you're going to hear from today is Emma, who is Edwin's fiance. At this point, from when we start, they've been doing long distance due to the war for about a year, and it's really starting to take a toll. And so those are all the people that you need to know that you're going to hear from. The only other people that are mentioned are Jane's son, Horace, who she's going to talk about a lot. And one of the letters will be to Edwin writing to his youngest brother, Van, who's not fighting in the war. So those are all the Browns for today's purposes. And then the only other thing is I'm just going to give you a couple of terms that if you're a Civil War person, you already will know, but just if this is your first time listening to Civil War letters, just in case. They talk a lot about regiments and companies. If it's a numbered thing like Edwin's in the 36th Regiment, that's a regiment. They're bigger. Companies make up regiments. They're A, B, C, D. So that's how the military is organized for these guys. Secesh, so rebels you're probably familiar with. These are the Confederates, the Southerners. They also refer to them as secesh, that's short for secessionists, sometimes even just sesh. So if you hear that, they're talking about the Southern soldiers. Bushwhackers, similarly, these are groups of little guerrilla warfare fighters, so 5 to 10 guys that go around attacking units, stealing supplies, interrupting mail services, that sort of thing. So they're talking about guerrilla warfare when they're talking about bushwhackers, smaller units than like a regiment or a company. Last weird thing that I had never heard of before, a rod is a unit of measurement that Van, one of the soldiers, really likes to use. It's 16.5 feet. So if he says 3 or 4 rods, you're talking about 50 feet or so. So that's it from me. We'll have the transcripts on screen. I'm going to try to, if this works, I'll try to click through them as they're reading if you want to try to follow along, although I realize there will be people in front of them as well. So, but they'll be there. Okay, that's it. I'm going to turn it over to the actors, and they're just going to read straight through all the letters. Thanks.
Albany, Athens County, Ohio, February 10th, 1862. My beloved, I received the letter you sent by Mr. Culver, and you know my feelings by experience. God bless you, my dearest, and help you through this mighty struggle. You have my prayers daily and hourly. If ever a sinner prayed in earnest, it must be me. You are the last object that calls my mind before sleeping, and from that I dream of you, and you are the first to my mind when I'm awakened in the morning. Ed, I have just burned your letter. Hated you awful bad, but was afraid of it being seen, and then what? I can't tell. My love for you is daily increasing. How do you suppose it'll be when the war is over? Why, I expect nothing else, but you will have to I don't know what, bind me in chains to keep me from eating you up alive. I believe you won't stay alive long. Old Jackson told you the truth when he told you I was true to you. Ed, how could I be otherwise than true? You are dearer to me than my own life. Heaven bless you, Ed. Your letter was funny for certain, you little scallywag. I was in hopes you had forgotten some of your devilment, but you say you are the same old Ed, and I expect you will be a tough case. But you can't commit, sir. I am an old chicken myself. Lord, I want to see you awful bad. No use talking about it, though. I hope to see you in spring. Ed, if I could see you, I would give my life almost. Oh, what shall we do all alone and nobody to cheer us? Good night, dearest one. Ed, write as often as you can to your affectionate, true lover, M. Hudgel. MacArthur, Ohio, Sunday, April 12th, 1862. Dear Ed, I have not sent you a letter for almost 2 weeks. I expect there is an answer to it at the office now, but I will send this tomorrow, and if I get any, I will answer it sometime soon. Ed, are you well? And where do you keep yourself? Is the war ever going to end? Let you come home? What do you tinker at? You can't handle a rifle and think they might spare you now. Have you heard from Van? I'm afraid he will die. I'll look for a letter from Ma Brown soon. I'm anxious to hear from them. You asked me in your letter if I had any beaux since I came out here. I won't lie about it. Yes, I've had a few. I've had 2 or 3 chances to marry good ones, too, but it seems as if I can't like anybody else well enough to marry. I told them that I had a man in the army I thought of more than any other one I knew of. I put them off the best way I could not to make them mad at me. Ed, I expect you won't like it, but I thought there would be no harm in having a little fun. I did have fun, sure enough. Some of the funnest fellows I ever come across. I stayed with them to pass off time after night. I have not stayed up often. I must stop. From your M.H.
Camp Russell, Chapmansville, Logan County, Virginia, May 16th, 1862. Ma, when I wrote to you the day before we got here, Friday last, we were about to go on scout. Well, we started that night, 112 rank and file, about 8 o'clock, and marched till 10 o'clock that night when we laid down in the sand, but not to sleep, as we had not brought any blankets along and the nights are awful cold here, and we like to have froze to death. Well, we started again a little before daylight, and we expected to find from 40 to 100 men, or rather bushwhackers. But instead of that, we found 2 men and a few old women. We rested 2 or 3 hours, till about 8 o'clock in all, and then started back. After we had come about 6 miles, some of the boys who had sore feet wanted to get into a canoe and ride down, but the officers would not let them, as we all knew the woods were full of secesh. But 2 of Company B fell behind and waited till we were out of sight and then got into it. But were not missed until we had got 2 miles when we had stopped to rest. Some of the boys saw them coming down just as they got within 3 or 4 rods of us. They were fired on twice, and immediately after 2 or 3 more shots were fired at some of the boys on the bank. Or more likely, they shot at the crowd. The balls made the dirt fly around us, but hit nobody. We could not see them from where we were, so some of us ran up the bank of the river, and they fired 3 or 4 more times at us, but we could nothing of them but the smoke of their guns, they being on the other side of the river and halfway up the mountain. Some of the boys fired at what they thought was them, but they took good care to keep a tree between us and themselves. We started on presently and had gone about 2 miles when their advance guard saw a man with a gun coming up the riverbank towards them. But when he saw them, he turned and ran around a bend in the road, and when he was hid by the bend from our men, he took to the woods and either hid his gun or likely threw it in the river. When our boys in the advance came around the bend, he was nowhere to be seen, but 3 of the boys took to the woods and the rest went on the road, thinking he had gone ahead. The 3 had not gone but a few rods into the wood before they saw Mr. Bushwhacker, and he saw them at the same time. He turned around and hollered to them, "Come on, my good fellows, I'm the doctor." "I'll doctor you, cuss you," says Jack Anderson, Company B. And he raised his gun and shot him in the side just as he was going to jump a log. He kind of gave a hollow and turned around. Cal Bratton then shot at and hit him in the breast, and before he had time to fall, Bob Morrow of Company B shot him again in the shoulder, the ball ranging upwards and coming out of the back of his head. Either one of them would have killed him. All of them went clear through him, and he died in 5 minutes. We dug a grave with our bayonets and buried him, and stopped at the next house and told them 4 women that was there that a man was killed up above there, and we wanted them to go up and bury him. They asked, "Is he one of your men or one of ours?" And Captain Vance says, "One of yours." "Well, we will bury him then." We found out afterwards that he belonged to that very house, and that one of the women was his wife. He was one of the men who fired at us 2 miles above. Roll has just been called, and also a list of 20 men who are going to start with the wagons tomorrow. I am one of them. We'll mail this at Kanawha. Nothing more at present. Direct to Campea. W.V. Brown.
Kanawha River, May 29th, 1862. Dear Mother, I'm at hospital at Gauntly. I came here the 26th, part of the wounded. Boy is gone to Charleston. We was to go there, but they say it is full, so I think we will stay here till we get better. There ain't but one besides myself here, and that is Bill McCabe. Lou Culver was killed. These was all 3 that were hurt in Comp C. McCabe, Lou, and myself. I am shot through the right forefinger. It is taken off close up. McCabe is shot through the leg, only a flesh wound. I would like to write to you all about the battle, but my hand is so I can't. There was 2 of our company taken prisoner at the bridge 3 miles from town, John Hampton and Hannings. Tell Captain Bakley, his wife, he is all right, also Captain Wilson's. There was not a man hurt in his company. Corporal Allen was taken prisoner. There was 7 of our regiment and 6 in the 44 wounded, both 35 to 40, all slightly. The battle lasted over an hour. I saw one of our cavalrymen. He said the rebels lost 500, wounded, killed, missing, and prisoners. Said they had buried 90 rebels now and had over 140 wounded. We bring 102 prisoners with us. We was to go home, but there was some misunderstanding among the doc, and I don't know if I will come home at all. The doc says it will be 2 months before I will be for duty. My hand ain't as sore as I thought it would be. You can tell the friends that their sons are all right. I must close. You must excuse my bad writing. I'm writing with my thumb and second finger, and it hurts my hand to write, as we are taken very good care of here. There is 14 of us here, and we fought like devils, so said the rebels' colonel, old George Crook. We got 500 guns, 5 cannons, lots of horses, and other things. I must close. Write soon, from your son, E.A. Brown.
Home, South Lebanon, May 21st, 1862. Dear sister, I have long been wanting to write you, little thought when I did to be surrounded by such afflicting circumstances. I am writing by the bedside of our dear Horace, who met with a very serious accident. I might as well say terrible accident, on Monday Eve, a little before sundown. He went down some 200 yards below our house to open the switch and let the freight train pass out of the switch after the passengers had gone by, and venturingly made an attempt to climb up the car while in motion, lost his hold and fell, one wheel, as we suppose, passing along the ankle, tearing the flesh and bones 3 inches above the ankle. A description of its appearance is too horrid, too heartbreaking. No one saw it done, and when his pa called to him some minutes, supposing him down looking after shells in the gravel, why he did not close the switch, he, in trying to rise up, thought something was the matter, and when reaching there, found him in this condition. He had dragged himself over the main track and crept more than 50 yards, making for the house. 2 hours elapsed before a physician could reach here, and in that time, he never made more than a moan. We had no hope the first night of saving his foot. Now we are encouraged. Yet if we succeed, his suffering will be long and intense. His fever is less and the inflammation not so great as we might expect when the flesh and bones were so mangled. I cannot tell you how bad it is, and the final result is very uncertain. One thing we can but see is that if he lives, he can be but a cripple. Yet in this deepest of all our afflictions, we bless God that he was not a mangled corpse. I pray God with all your sorrows and ever anxious hours for your dear boys that you may never behold such a sight as we have seen in this case. And from the time we found him until today, he has not made a loud noise. The physicians think they never saw such fortitude, but this PM he suffers more, and I cannot leave him but a minute at a time, and all he begs for is that I lie down by him and take his hands. You will please let the 2 Libbies and friends know that of this sad misfortune. Thursday noon. Dear sister, I was compelled to leave this yesterday unfinished. Horace suffered so intensely that I could not write a line, and now he is again very bad, and such a black and bruised limb wound you certainly could not conceive of, and the result is very uncertain. Although his fever is not so great today, his limb is terrible, but we are doing all that we possibly can to save the foot. If unsuccessful, I shall despair of his life. This is all I can now say. The rest, well, but sorrow-stricken indeed. I am writing on my lap by Horry, and his moans are truly disturbing. Cannot say more. Will inform you of him again. Have no recent word from your boys. Write if you can without neglecting them. Your sister in love and deep sorrow. You can sympathize. Love to all. Jane.
Campea, Virginia, July 28th. Dear Mother, I got here last night at 9 o'clock. Found Van well. I left Pomeroy the 26th. I will go to Gauntlet Bridge in 2 days. The river is very low. I am well as ever and feel all right. Van and I have been all around. This is a nice camp and the boys are in good quarters. Van is well and he is as fat as a hog. He was on guard when I got here. The boys will have fresh hog tonight as they did when I got to Gallipass. I think I won't go to the regiment for a week. Van says he's going to write you this afternoon, so I must excuse this poor thing. I must close. The day is very hot, the nights are very cold. I must write to Emma today, so I will close this thing. E.A. Brown.
Ma, as Ed was writing some to you, I thought I would write a little too. Ed got here last night while I was on guard. He is a good deal poorer than I expected to see him. There's been considerable excitement here and at Charleston in the last few days, owing to the fact of a part of the 9th Virginia Regiment being captured at Summersville by some Sesh cavalry. I was down to Charleston on a pass Friday night, just after the dispatch came saying 2 companies of the 9th, including Lieutenant Colonel Starr, were taken prisoners, and that they wanted reinforcements to hold. Nothing new here of importance. I believe I wrote to you that our major had resigned. It is said now that it is a mistake that he has not resigned, but I think if the truth was known, he wanted to, but his resignation was not accepted. There was a train of about 100 mule wagons down from Gauley Bridge yesterday, afternoon provisions. None but small boats can go up above here now the river is so low. I don't think Ed will leave before the last of the week. Nothing more at present I can think of. W.V. Brown.
August 21st, Camp Union. Dear Brother Dan, for God's sakes, don't volunteer. You don't know what a soldier has to endure, and you had better stay with your mother and father. Dan, take my advice. I have been in a year, and I can tell you that it is no fun, Dan. You can't stand these hard marches, and the treatment you will get now. Dan, stay. This is all I ask. Take my advice. E.A. Brown.
South Lebanon, September 21st, 1862. My dear sister, I have been so long hoping to hear from you in answer to my last that I have determined to write but a dozen lines, hoping to hear. My many and constant cares are my only reason for being silent, and if you had been here, you would not wonder that distant friends were neglected. I am happy in being able to say that Horace has been improving in health for 3 weeks past. He can now eat without throwing up his food, and his bowels are in much better condition. The limb is healing slowly. We have strong hopes that he will use it, but when is far in the future. To all appearances, much dead bone must find its way out before he can use it. We can now raise it and put fresh lint under every day, and by lifting his body every day, and by one lifting his body and another carrying the box his limb is cushioned in, we place him in the armchair, and he sits up part of the time. Last week, for the first time, he raised himself on his elbows in bed. He is tearful and happy, and a few minutes after the most severe heart sickness or pain, we are cheered by sweet songs which are giving his full strength. He often speaks of the visit to his aunties he and his ma are to make when he gets well. Our family are in usual health, but oh, the anxiety of mind we all feel. Did Edwin return to the army? I noticed the killed of some of his regiment in the recent battles. Where is Van? Frank does not hear of him of late. Preparations for war and its effect is all that we see or hear. Hundreds and thousands are passing our door each day for the seat of war, and frequently a rude box is taken from the express cars and placed on the flat form, which contains all that is left of one who left but a little time ago. Cheerful and eager for the fight, confident of success and a speedy return. I scarcely press the hand of a friend anymore, but tears of sorrow gush forth. A son, a husband, or father has been killed or wounded, and the end is not yet. The anguish is untold. My heart sickens at the thought. I will not imagine sorrow. Each day brings its sad accounts, but must hasten. Papers from Minnesota by yesterday's mail, but no letters. Do write if it's only 3 lines and tell all how you are. I'll send love and hope, soon to hear. Goodbye, your sister Jane.
Point Pleasant, September 23rd, 1862. Dear Mother, we have been here now a week, and I should have wrote you sooner, but I had neither pen, ink, paper, nor envelopes. All were burned up at Piat. This is all the paper I have got, and I borrowed it, so I can't write you a very long letter, but I will tell you what we've been doing these past 2 weeks. On the 10th, as you probably know, our forces consisting of the 34th and 37th Ohio were attacked at Fayette, and after a hard-fought battle, we had to retreat into the night. We arrived at Charleston about 10 o'clock, crossed to this side of the Elk River. We ate our dinners and were then called out in line of battle and placed along the edge of the woods facing Elk River. This was about 12 o'clock. Heavy cannonading and musket firing was kept up for about an hour, and then it began to come closer and closer, and fire began to break out in several places in town, and we knew our men were slowly retreating, but contesting every inch of ground. Our regiment was then ordered to change its position, being brought within a range of a regiment of sharpshooters deployed along the opposite side of Elk in houses, behind salt barrels and everything else that would shelter them. When we came down into the bottom, they fired a volley at us, and as I heard a ball whiz over my head, they fired mostly too high, I instinctively ducked my head, feeling sort of shamed. I looked around at the company and saw 2/3 of them ducking their heads. This was the first fire. After that, there wasn't a man flinched, excepting 1 or 2 cases not worth mentioning. By this time, the 37th and 47th had retreated. I believe if we had had 2 fresh regiments to have thrown across Elk at them at this time, we could have whipped them, but we scarcely had 4,000 effective men, certainly not over that. They had at least 8,000. Well, they planted a battery of 18-pounders on the opposite side of Elk, just about a mile from us, and then they put the shot and shell into us hot and heavy till we got the order to fall back about 25 yards into the woods. The rebels had excellent cannoneers. Every one of their shell burst right over our heads. From 3 to 5 o'clock, 'twas mostly an artillery duel. Company B of our regiment was deployed right along the bank of Elk, skirmishing with a Georgia regiment on the opposite side, about 200 yards apart. After 5 o'clock, our company was ordered to relieve Company B. We had to go about a quarter of a mile across an open field with bullets flying all around. But strange to say, not a man was hurt. We took Company B's place and kept up a hot fire till dark. We took advantage of houses, fences, logs, and anything else that would cover us, and they did the same. Company B had 2 killed here and 3 or 4 wounded. We had 2 men barely scratched. Our company appeared to hold charmed lives. At dark, we got the orders to retreat, and we fell onto a hill where we left our regiment, but all the rest had retreated an hour before. Here was a pretty fix. A regiment of rebel cavalry had gone up the river 2 hours before and crossed, and we expected them down upon us every minute. And some of our men said that they had crossed in force below us, and there was no slipping past them. There was only one way for it, and that was to retreat through the mountains. And this we did, but we hadn't got 200 yards before they were upon us. But they didn't know it. The way of it was this. Our boys had asked then across Elk through this day if the 4th Virginia was with them, and they said yes. Well, just after we started to retreat, we were hailed by a body of troops. We couldn't see how many, and they asked who we were, and we answered, 4th Virginia. They said, all right, supposing it was their 4th Virginia, you may bet we got out of there as soon as possible. We arrived here on the 17th. Our regiment had 5 men killed and about 25 missing. The Rebs lost at Charleston at least 400. Why can't Pa come down and see us? You try and come too. We may stay here 2 weeks. We'll be paid off this week. It is said our cavalry had a skirmish with rebels. Cavalry 9 miles above here today. I doubt it. W.B. Brown.
Camp Carthage, Tennessee, April 8th, 1863. Dear friends at home, last night's mail brung me a letter from Father and one from Emma. Father's letter was writing the 31st, telling me of the death of my brother Van. Emma was very sick and had to send for the doctor. She commenced her letter the 25th of last month and finished it the 31st. Poor girl, I fear I never will see her again. I wrote her a letter and sent it in Dan's a few days ago. If she has not got it yet, for God's sake, don't send it to her. She says she has to work hard, so that will only make her sick. I fear Em is very sick, and I fear I won't get to see her again. I don't believe that report about her getting married. I did think it was so till I got her letter that sung another song, the same as the one it used to. Father, you and Mother spoke about not getting any letters from me. This makes 18 letters I have written you since coming to Carthage, and from Nashville about the same. Your letters came very regularly here. I got one every mail, and have at times 2. The loss of dear brother Van sends a gloom over my mind that makes known hardly what I am about. I pity my mother. It will go harder with her than all the rest. It will go hard with you, Father, and Dan, and you, and Sis will miss his welcome letters, and I never can realize his death. Maybe it is all for the best. Mother bore it the best you can. We'll all have to die, I think. I will be with you in June or July to stay. The captain is going to get me a discharge. You may not say anything about it, for there may be such a thing as him not getting me one. He told me last night that he was going to do just the thing, right through. Write soon about Emma, and don't send that letter to her. And if such a thing is that she is in Albany, and well, you may let her see it, and tell her that I don't believe she's going to be married. Please write soon and tell me how Em is and all about things at home. Goodbye, yours, E.A. Brown.
Home, Saturday evening, April 24th, 1863. Dear Edwin, as I am alone tonight, I thought I would spend the evening in writing to you. We are all in usual health. I expect you have been tending to waiting on and dealing out the nauseous doses to sick and suffering soldiers, poor fellows. How I wish their mothers could be with them. But the cruel fortunes of war have denied us anxious mothers and sisters what might and should be our comfort and privilege of watching over and smoothing the dying pillow of our loved ones. Van, my boy, my darling boy, he was dying, and I knew it not. I could not be with him to hear his last goodbye. I could not hear his earnest calls for home and loved ones. Never, oh, never can I give him up. I so much hoped for his return, so much doted on the happiness we might yet enjoy. I had indulged such high hopes of his future usefulness when peace should again be restored to our land. He has gone now, forever gone from us. But he has left a brave and honorable record to his friends and his country. Our hearts will ever cherish the memory of his good deeds. It would be such a great comfort and consolation could we know where his remains lie. But this dear privilege is denied us. We know and feel that good deeds are embalmed in the hearts of his loyal countrymen and in the history of the great present. We know his precious dust rests in faraway southern clime. But the God who ever watches over and protects us will watch over his clay-cold bed till the great resurrection morn, when we may all meet a united family. Oh, what a satisfaction it would be to us to learn all the particulars of Van. It seems as though I can't wait from day to day. It is now almost 5 weeks since we heard of his death, and no particulars yet. Oh dear, had he been at home. I know most we could have saved him, but he is gone, and we must try and bear it as best we can. We had 2 letters from you this week, one dated the 11th. You don't know how much we dread and fear to open a letter anymore for fear one of you are sick. We are thankful, 1,000 times thankful that you all write us so often. It is all that can cheer us now. And I hope you will never again mention your fears that we will get tired of paying postage. We deem it a great privilege. We are so lonely and sad. Much love to John Eben and yourself. Write often. From your afflicted mother.
McMinnville, Tennessee, September 16th, 1863. Dear Mother and Father, I'm ordered to the front to Chattanooga. I will be with my regiment next. My coming home is played out. I might write more when I reach my regiment. I have not heard from you in over a month, and am now at the depot at the above place. I have a leave of absence on the road where G.W. McClintock sent it off on the 4th, and have not heard from it, yet I don't think I ever will. I will now have to close. If Emma is there, give her my love. If not, write to her next mail. Mother, don't grieve. I will trust in God and bear the blunt. You will hear from me soon. Truly, your son, E.A. Brown.
My dear, yours of the 9 is before me as yet unanswered. You seem to feel rather badly over my letter of the 3rd of April. Ed, I am so pleased at the idea of your coming home so soon that there don't anything bother me now. But I'm afraid you won't get off after all. Ed, you told me to write and tell you how I felt towards you. I feel towards you with my fingers, but can't reach you so far away. Well, I do feel all right. Would be glad to see you any time, and when you come see me right away without fail. And when you are agreed, we will marry. For anything I know of now, Ed, I am a Democrat, and a strong one, and always expect to be one. I could not be an abolitionist and have a clean conscience to save me. I have seen enough to turn me to stone. You will find that they are working the overthrow of this government and will build upon its ruins a despotism and will be a free American people no longer. Ed, you spoke to me in several letters about going to Albany and staying with your ma. Ed, you know that would not do. The people of that town would say that I was afraid that I would not get you, and would wonder why I did not stay at home till you came after me, and it would arouse the people's curiosity wonderfully. So I believe I won't go this summer and wait till fall. Ed, if you lived a little closer to me and could send me some money, as well as not, I would make bedclothes to go to housekeeping with. But you are so far away, and the money might not come safe through, and we would both lose it. Well, my sheet is full. When I see you, I hope I'll have a better time telling you my travels and trials, which have been hard on me, Ed. All send their love to you. Our folks want to see you so bad. I must stop. From M, forever. Ed, in my last I told you I would not live in Albany. Well, indeed, I don't like the thought of it. I like this county better. July 4th, 1864, Thornville, Perry County. Friend Ed, yours of the 22nd of June is before me. You say you have written me 8 letters and have received none. I have written 3 or 4 letters since you came to Charleston, and why is it you can't get them is no fault of mine. Ed, we have about come to the end of our chain. I have changed my mind within a month or 2. In fact, my love for you has been dying for a year, Ed. I have tried to love you harder, but it is out of the question. It has been so long since I've seen you, and it is against my nature to love anyone and be in other company all the time. There was a time when I would have married you any day, but that time is past and gone. The closer our time come for getting married, the worse I felt. I don't want to marry anybody in my poor health. I would be of no account to anyone, only an expense. Ed, I know I am doing wrong. Would to God I had never seen your face. I believe if I had stayed in Albany, it would have been all right. Ed, I don't care a snap for my own feelings, but I know how you feel. It makes me feel awful to think of us quitting, but I have good reasons for not marrying. What will your folks think of me, my God? Ed, I am afraid I'll rue it to the longest day I live, but I can't help it now. I don't love you well enough to marry you. I have seen the day I loved you better than I did my own life. Ed, I was nothing more than a child then. I thought I would rather marry you than anyone living. I tried to love you all the time. But I am sorry to say that I don't love you well enough to marry you. And I'm sorry that I did not tell you soon, but I have been dreading it like death. I know what a friend you have been to me. I don't want you to think I am flirting. I am not, but I am telling you the truth. Ed, you will never forgive me. While you live, you must try to forget if you can. Liv Wilson will be after you when you come home, like she was the other time. You used to tell me you had a feeling for her that you never would get over. Ed, if we never marry, I never want to see you again. It will only bring back old feelings and make us both miserable. I never expect to see any happiness as long as I live. I am stuck like I was 2 years ago this summer. The doctor says it is my liver. He told me I would go to the boneyard if I did not look out. Here we are, both of us sick. What kind of an out we would make, keeping house if we were married. As I told you once before, I might have been married long ago, but I did not want to marry. I want you to marry some good girl that is my better. One that you deserve, Ed. I am in earnest. I would like to have you come, but I know how we both will feel, so I would rather never see you. I have the blues to kill. Ma and Dan ask me what ails me. I tell them nothing. I know my feelings better than anyone. I was afraid of this when you was home. Feared I weaned away from you and mentioned it, but thought it was out of the question. Ed, forgive me if you can. You may forgive, but you can't forget how fast friends we have been, Ed. We don't hitch anymore on politics, and we will quarrel. I'm going to send this to Albany to be mailed. I have written I don't know how many since I've been at Charleston, and you always say you never got them. Ed, I must bid you farewell like you did me the one time when you was thinking strong of quitting me, and you know how miserable I was. I have had some awful trouble since our last meeting. No more from your once intended M.
You want a little coda. Horace survived. He was the only of Lorraine, Jane's 7 children who did survive to after she died. Van died. Dan, the youngest son, died in the 1870s. Edwin survived until 1912. Emma married George Humbarger and moved to Iowa. They had 7 children. Edwin ran around a little bit with several different women after he got back from the war, and eventually married a woman named Phoebe Brownlee, and they had 4 kids. That's it. I think that's what we've got for the program. Thank you so much for coming. Wow, that was incredible. There's some great actors in the theater department, and our own Lorraine Wachna